You're not depressed. You're a prophet. What the world labels as affliction, heaven may see as assignment. That aching in your spirit, that heaviness you carry, it is not simply a medical condition or a mood disorder. It may be the echo of God's call vibrating in your soul. When God sets someone apart, it rarely feels like a promotion. It feels like loss. But it is often the necessary soil in which the seeds of revelation are planted. We live in a time where silence is suspicious and stillness is seen as stagnation. But if you look throughout history, God has always done his deepest work in silence. When Moses fled to the backside of the desert, the world saw a failure, but heaven saw a prophet in the making. When Elijah sat under a tree begging for death, he wasn't having a nervous breakdown. He was carrying the unbearable weight of divine vision in a world too blind to receive it. And when Jesus knelt alone in the garden, weeping in agony, the world would have seen a man under duress. But we know now he was preparing to redeem humanity. That grief in your soul might not be a curse. It might be a compass. It points you toward the heart of God, because to carry his heart is to feel his heart break. When everyone else celebrates what is corrupt, you grieve. When the world praises comfort and compromise, something inside you cries out for truth, for holiness, for justice. That's not depression, that's discernment. That's the beginning of prophecy. I'm not saying the pain isn't real. I'm not saying you should ignore wise counsel or medical help, but I am saying don't be too quick to call what you're going through a malfunction. Don't be too eager to medicate what might be a message. God often speaks clearest to those who are quieted by sorrow. The valley is not void of God. It's often where his whisper is the loudest. And when you've sat in that stillness long enough, when you've let the tears fall without shame, when you've stopped trying to explain your pain to people who cannot understand it, then you begin to hear what God has been trying to say all along. You were not created for popularity. You were not born to blend in. Prophets were never the life of the party. They were the ones crying out in the wilderness. They were the ones burdened with a message the crowd didn't want but desperately needed. So when you feel that ache, when you wake up with a weight you can't explain, remember, you might be carrying a message that hasn't yet found its moment. You might be in the cave, but God is there too, preparing you for the day when he says, speak. And when that moment comes, you won't speak from theory, you'll speak from scars. You'll speak from survival. You'll speak as one who has been through the fire and came out marked by heaven. And your words won't just be eloquent, they'll be anointed. They'll carry the weight of someone who has wrestled with God in the dark and lived to tell the story. So I tell you again, you are not depressed. You are a prophet. Don't mistake your preparation for punishment. Don't trade your calling for comfort. Let the ache do its work. Let the silence shape your soul. Because when God finally tells you to speak, the world will never be the same. You're not depressed. You're a prophet. That ache inside you, that weight on your chest, that sense that something is off in the world, it's not weakness, it's not brokenness. It's sensitivity to things others are blind to. You walk into a room and feel the tension before a word is spoken. You watch the news and your heart cracks while others scroll on. You're not emotionally unstable, you're spiritually awake. You've been chosen to feel what others ignore. You've been marked by heaven to see what others look past. That doesn't come without a cost. Every prophet in Scripture knew what it was like to carry something they didn't ask for. Jeremiah said, I wish I'd never been born. Elijah asked God to take his life. Even Jesus, the Son of God, withdrew to lonely places, overwhelmed by the burden he carried. The pain you feel is not a sign of your failure. It might be a sign of your calling. You were never meant to float on the surface of life, numb and distracted. God has called you to the deep, and in the deep, things are heavier. The deeper the calling, the heavier the cost. But here's what you need to know. Just because it's heavy doesn't mean it's harmful. Just because it hurts doesn't mean it's wrong. There is a difference between pain that breaks you and pain that builds you. And prophets are built in pain. You may feel isolated right now, like no one truly understands what you're going through, but that's often where prophets are shaped. God pulls them away so he can speak to them directly. He silences the noise of the crowd so he can awaken something eternal inside. What feels like abandonment might actually be alignment. God is not punishing you, he's preparing you. You've got to stop believing that feeling deeply makes you defective. The world has tried to numb the prophets, sedate the seers, and medicate the messengers. But when you numb the pain, you often numb the purpose. When you silence the cry, you risk silencing the call. Yes, therapy has its place. Yes, medicine has its place. But discern what's medical and what's spiritual. Sometimes what looks like depression is actually holy dissatisfaction. Sometimes what looks like anxiety is the alarm bell of a soul that refuses to settle for compromise. You weren't meant to be comfortable in a broken world. You were meant to confront it. And prophets don't just see problems, they carry solutions. That's why the weight feels so unbearable at times. Because God is not just showing you what's wrong, he's trusting you to speak into it, to stand in the gap, to feel the burden so you can carry the word. That is sacred work. That is holy ground. Don't despise your tears. Don't rush through your silence. Don't curse your sleepless night. God may be downloading vision into your spirit in ways too deep for words. So no, you are not just going through a dark season. You are being refined. You are not drowning. You are deepening. And when the time is right, when your soul has been shaped by the silence, God will call you forth. And when you speak, it won't be with empty words. It will be with authority, with power, with truth that sets captives free. You will speak like someone who has wrestled with angels, like someone who didn't just read about God, but met him in the valley. You're not depressed. You're a prophet. Let the world misunderstand you. Let the weight remain for now, because what you carry is not a curse. It's a calling. And the world is waiting for your voice. You're not depressed. You're a prophet. What you're feeling is not the absence of hope, but the presence of a burden that isn't from man, but from God. You feel things others shake off. You notice what others ignore. You cry when others laugh, not because you're weak, but because you're tuned to a different frequency. You were never made to walk in step with the crowd. You were made to feel the tremble of heaven in a world that has gone numb. It's not mental illness. It may be spiritual awareness. There is a cost to being called. When God places something on your life, it will not look like the lives around you. You will feel disconnected, isolated, even misunderstood. But it's not because you're less, it's because you're being set apart. Prophets are rarely comfortable. They don't fit into easy categories. They ask questions no one wants to answer. They cry out in a wilderness that looks empty, but it's the place where God trains his messengers. You may be in a season of sorrow, but it doesn't mean you've lost your way. You might be right where God needs you to be to hear him clearly. In the stillness, in the ache, he is shaping you. The world celebrates loudness, noise, distraction, instant gratification, but God still prefers the whisper. And to hear it, he often allows his prophets to walk through silence, not because he's far, but because he's close in a way you're not used to. Deep calls unto deep, and the surface level won't satisfy you anymore. What others call depression, God may be using as the soil for revelation. What others call emotional fragility, God may call spiritual sensitivity. But here's the part many don't understand. Prophets carry more than pain. They carry vision. God doesn't burden a heart without also giving it glimpses of what could be. If you've ever looked at injustice and thought, this isn't how it should be, that's not just disappointment. That's the early stirrings of a prophetic call. God is not just allowing you to feel the brokenness. He's preparing you to speak life into it. He's letting you see clearly, not to torture you, but to trust you with the truth. What weighs heavy on your heart today may be the very thing He's calling you to heal tomorrow. This is why the fight is so fierce. You think you're being overwhelmed, but you're being awakened. You think you're losing control, but God is teaching you to lean on Him entirely. You think you're falling apart, but in reality, something divine is being formed. The pain is not the end of your story. It's the prelude to your purpose. Don't let the enemy lie to you. You are not finished. You are not crazy. You are not forsaken. You are being commissioned. And when the time comes, you'll look back on this season and see it differently. The nights you thought would break you, they built you. The silence that scared you, it tuned your ears to heaven. The ache that made no sense, it became the message you were born to carry. You will not speak from comfort, you will speak from consecration. You will not deliver words that entertain, you will release truth that convicts, heals, and transforms. So don't run from this moment. Embrace it, not because it's easy, but because it's holy. God is not finished with you. In fact, He's just beginning. The world may not see it yet, but they will. Because prophets may go unnoticed for a while, but when they speak, everything starts to shift. You are not depressed, you are a prophet. And when God is ready, your voice will rise, not from the mountaintop, but from the valley. And it will echo with heaven's fire. You're not depressed, you're a prophet. That deep ache, that sense of disconnection from the noise and flow of life, it's not proof that something is wrong with you. It might be evidence that God has placed something inside you that won't allow you to settle for what everyone else accepts. You feel out of place because you're not made for the shallow. You were created for the deep. And when God calls someone to the deep, He often allows them to feel what others escape. You're not overthinking, you're over-carrying. That's not confusion. That might be clarity waiting to find its voice. We've been taught that if we feel too much, cry too much, care too much, we must be broken. But what if those very signs are not dysfunction, but design? Think about the prophets who came before you. Moses, who fled into the desert for 40 years. Elijah, who called fire from heaven, but fell into despair days later. Jeremiah, who was known not for his strength, but his tears. Their lives weren't linear. Their calling didn't come dressed in comfort. They wrestled with questions, loneliness, fear. But through it all, God was shaping them into instruments that could carry His word with power. Your pain might not be proof that you've lost your way. It might mean you're walking the same road the prophets walked. It's easy to confuse divine weight with personal weakness. It's easy to call what you carry too much when no one else seems to feel it. But the prophetic life is rarely shared in full by those around you. God often reveals His secrets in the hidden place. And that's where you are now. Not lost, not forgotten, but hidden. Hidden doesn't mean discarded. Hidden means protected. Hidden means prepared. There's something God is doing in your spirit that can't be rushed. Yes, it feels lonely. Yes, it feels uncertain. But even Jesus spent time in the wilderness before His voice thundered through Galilee. Before the declaration, there is always preparation. Don't despise the preparation. Don't curse the silence. You're being trained to listen, not just speak. The most powerful prophets weren't just loud, they were accurate. They didn't just stir emotion, they shifted nations. And accuracy comes from intimacy with God. That intimacy is being forged in your solitude, in your sorrow, in your sacred wrestlings with pain and purpose. Others may be moving fast, but you are moving deep. Arises others may be building platforms, but you're building an altar. And in the long run, it's the altar that sustains the voice, not the platform. What you feel is not failure, it's formation. The burden you carry now may one day become the breakthrough for someone else. The tears you shed in private may become the water that softens someone else's hardened heart. The questions you ask may become the answers someone else is desperate to hear. You were never meant to be a mirror of this world. You were called to be a window to another one. A voice that doesn't echo culture, but calls it higher. And that kind of voice doesn't come cheap. So if you find yourself weeping when others laugh, questioning when others settle, praying when others sleep, don't run from it. Lean in. You are not losing your mind. You're finding your mission. You are not emotionally unstable. You are spiritually in tune. This is not the end of you. This is the awakening of you. Your words may not be ready yet, but your heart is being carved to carry them. You are not depressed. You are a prophet. And when God has finished forming the message in the fire of your suffering, your voice will come forth with power, and it will not be silenced. You're not depressed. You're a prophet. That gnawing pain, that quiet sorrow, that invisible weight pressing on your chest when no one else notices. It may not be what it seems. The world looks at you and sees someone who's tired, someone who's sad, someone who's distant. But heaven may be looking at you and seeing someone who's been chosen, someone who's being called to speak to things others are too afraid to name. Prophets have always walked with a limp, carried a burden, and seen what others refuse to see. You're not broken, you're being awakened. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it's a gift wrapped in discomfort. The reason your heart breaks over things others ignore is because you're connected to something higher. You're not just emotional, you're perceptive. God has tuned your spirit like a stringed instrument, sensitive to every disruption, every cry, every injustice. It doesn't feel like power, it feels like pain. But it is a holy kind of pain. And if you sit with it, if you lean into it instead of running from it, it will teach you how to see with the eyes of heaven. It will show you what matters when the world chases noise and nonsense. When God sets someone apart, He doesn't always make it obvious. He doesn't send thunder. Sometimes He sends silence. Sometimes He lets you feel forgotten, abandoned, even misunderstood. But that space isn't punishment, it's process. He's removing distractions. He's untangling your identity from applause. He's emptying you of what the world stuffed inside you so He can fill you with something eternal. You think you're alone, but you're in the same wilderness where Moses met fire, where Elijah heard a whisper, where Jesus prepared for the cross. Don't mislabel your solitude. It's sacred space. And in that space, God begins to deposit things in you that are too weighty for casual conversation. You feel tension in your spirit because you're carrying something not yet born. You sense things shifting before they change. You weep without explanation. You feel restless even when nothing is wrong. That's not a sign of disorder. That's prophetic tension. You're being asked to hold what's coming while still walking through what is. And that tension is holy. It doesn't always bring clarity, but it does bring closeness with God. He trusts you with this weight. That's why it feels heavy. But make no mistake, the burden is not the end. There will come a time when what you carry in secret will be spoken aloud. When the tears you've cried will give weight to your words. When your silence will break open into a voice that cannot be ignored. You are not just here to feel, you are here to declare. You are not just called to endure, you are called to awaken others. Your sorrow has shaped you, your wilderness has refined you, and when God says now, you'll rise. Not because you feel ready, but because He has made you ready. You're not depressed. You're a prophet in process, a voice in the making. The storm inside you isn't chaos, it's construction. Let the weight teach you. Let the silence mold you. Let the ache bring you to your knees. Not in defeat, but in surrender. For from that posture, your voice will rise, not from bitterness, but from burning, not from theory, but from fire. And when it does, the world will not hear a victim. they will hear a vessel. One who walked through the night and came out carrying the morning.